We progressives have driven the debate about the big issues in this election year, from health care to the Iraq War, from investing in green jobs and healthy growth to exposing the financial deregulation that led to the housing crisis. And every year at Take Back America, it seems, we learn new lessons from Andrea Batista Schlesinger about how to talk about those big issues in a way that means something to struggling middle-class and working-class families. Since 2002, Andrea has made the New York-based Drum Major Institute a public policy think tank with national impact and grassroots usefulness. They have done research on the middle-class squeeze, and each year they rate Congress on votes that either help or hurt the middle class and those trying to climb into the middle class. Andrea has stood up to Lou Dobbs on immigration and that frustrating CNN show. And I would imagine she will be very influential with the new governor of New York, and we hope with the new president of the United States. Please welcome a drum major for justice, Andrea Batista Schlesinger.
He had to bring up the Lou Dobbs thing. I was finally getting over that. So Larry mentioned crossing things off. So now that Larry spoke, this is what I'm left with. I'm going to try my best. So I'm from New York, but lately that seems to be a punchline. So I'm just relieved that we're doing the event at this hotel, But I do want to share some lessons from my home state that have absolutely nothing to do with wire transfers or crossing state lines. It's such a clean crowd. Do any of you even know what okay. And do you read the New York Post or the Daily News? Or watch Fox? In New York, we were all so tired of the Republican Pataki administration, the passivity, the refusal to acknowledge the increasing insecurity of New Yorkers, the dysfunction of Albany, our state capital, in which business was done behind closed doors, if at all. We had an upstate that was essentially a manifestation of our changing economy, a New York City plagued by profound income inequality, an increasing number of middle-class families who could no longer afford to live in their own city. So we elected someone whose slogan was, "Change on day one." No, that's not, my joke is the next line, so hold on. But what we didn't anticipate, all of us, was that what was more important than day one was day two. Before we knew it, before we could even blink, our former governor was resisting progressive taxation, aligning himself with the tort reformers who think that the cost of health care is going up because too many people who are the victims of negligence or malpractice want to sue, rather than the insurance industry heads who are getting richer and richer. He was announcing proposals like giving people driver's license regardless of their citizenship, which is a good idea, an important idea, has to be done, but doing so without any of the base building that could have turned that idea into reality. When it comes to building an economy that works for working people in our country, what happens on November 5th is more important than what happens on November 4th, especially if we elect a Democrat to office. Who will set the tone of the debate? There's a profound squeeze. The other speakers have detailed it well, a profound middle-class squeeze, essential questions of power, of government versus corporations, in which it's clear everywhere from our bankruptcy policy to our trade policy to even our higher education policy that corporations have won. But who will set the tone? Will we be talking about retraining programs as a solution? School uniforms as if that could deal with our the profound inadequacy of our public education system? Targeted tax credits as if targeted tax credits could solve our problems? Or will we be talking about how to strengthen the labor movement that built America's middle class? That was for Larry, because are we going to be talking about how to pass an immigration policy that doesn't start with fences so that even Democrats can convince Lou Dobbs that we're tough enough, as too many Democrats have been doing? Or are we going to start with the recognition that the longer immigrants labor in the shadows with no rights, all working Americans are vulnerable? Are we going to give the federal government the ability to actually negotiate down the cost of prescription drugs? Are we going to stop passing these trade bills that continue to undermine American workers? You know, how many Democrats voted? Do you know if your local member of Congress voted for this Peru trade deal? Do you know? Do we know? They say that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That is nowhere more true than on this Peru trade bill, where everybody who voted for it also laments the downward spiral of American workers and our immigration crisis, and continues to vote for the bills that put us in this position. On the elevator on the way down here, I met people who were at the conference before this, and that was an association of psychotherapists. And I thought there's got to be some kind of symbolic value in this fact, perhaps a joint caucus that we could put together. Are we going to stop passing diluted energy and tax bills? Are we going to tax hedge funds the way they ought to be taxed? And tell corporate America that we no longer buy their line, that greedy lawyers and too many lawsuits are the problem? You know, the president was talking about in his last State of the Union address the importance of volunteerism, and I agree. But I don't think that volunteerism should apply to the banking sector. Are we actually going to have a president who's going to eliminate all forms of abusive lending practices and give judges the ability to renegotiate mortgages, reform our bankruptcy laws? If we're going to set things right, we need to lay out a bold economic agenda, and we need to stick to it. And we can't be fooled, because the piddling moderates are going to come in on November 5th, and they're going to advance their agenda of tax credits and school uniforms, because that's what they think Americans want. We need to get smart about what the president can do. We need to get smart about what's on the table of Congress. And remember, there are 470 elections that are taking place that first Tuesday, not just one. And unfortunately, not every member of the House who is up for election is Donna Edwards. So we need to get smart about what members of Congress are up to. And we need to look to places to where a progressive agenda is actually being advanced. You know, we have these debates up here about, is a progressive ideology best for people, conservative ideology, is government good, is government bad? The best way to have that debate is to actually highlight where government is working. There are people in San Francisco who now have paid sick leave. There are people, workers in New Jersey, who are soon going to have paid family leave. There are states and cities that are actually pioneering solutions to climate change. We need to get those stories down, because even if, as progressives like New Yorkers, we are inclined to be negative, the truth is, and we have good reason, as I started with, the truth is that it is those success stories that will actually help us advance a progressive agenda, not just a critique of a conservative ideology. But to do this, I think we're going to have to broaden our understanding of shared economic interest. And I say this with all due respect to the labor movement. They are going to have to be as concerned about progressive taxation and making that a litmus test for their endorsements as they are for the Employee Free Choice Act. And immigrant rights groups are going to have to march as strongly as they would around the Employee Free Choice Act, as they would around comprehensive immigration reform. We are all going to have to think of our interests more broadly. Ultimately, I'm going to take the train back to New York with my head held up high, because thanks to the Mann Act, and if you don't know what that is and you think you might want to know, you should research it. In New York, we've been given a do-over. But unfortunately, with our country, we're not going to have that chance. So all of us need to be thinking as much about November 5th as we do about November 4th. Thank you.